Let's start a little thought experiment. Imagine you're driving through Texas. You're obeying the law. You haven't been charged with a crime. You haven't been convicted of a crime. You haven't even been accused of a crime. And yet somehow, before the day is over, the government takes your money. Not fines, not taxes, not a court judgment, just takes it. Whatever you have in your wallet. And then tells you if you'd like it back, you're welcome to prove you're innocent. Now, if that sounds backwards to you, congratulations. You still possess functioning constitutional instincts. Because one of the strangest things in modern American government is that we've somehow normalized a process that sounds like it was invented by a villain in a legal drama. Civil asset forfeiture. A policy so bizarre that if you tried to explain it to most Americans without naming it, they'd assume you were describing corruption in another country. Somewhere with a lot more coups and significantly fewer bald eagles. Now, before anybody gets nervous, let's acknowledge the obvious. Crime is real. Drug cartels are real. Criminal organizations are real. Nobody is arguing otherwise. The question is not whether government should fight crime. The question is whether government should have the power to take property from people without first proving they ever committed crime. Those are very different conversations. And as a libertarian, this issue always fascinated me because it creates one of the weirdest coalitions in politics. Conservatives dislike it. Libertarians dislike it. Civil libertarians dislike it. Criminal justice reform advocates dislike it. Even a lot of police officers privately dislike parts of it. When you find an issue capable of uniting that many normally disagreeable people, you've either discovered a profound truth or a free barbecue with an open bar. This is not one that is complicated. Conservatives often tell me that they support property rights. I believe them. They support limited government. I believe them. They support constitutional protections. I believe them. Which is why I find civil asset forfeiture so confusing. Because imagine trying to apply the following logic anywhere else. Imagine government arresting you first, and then asking you to prove you weren't guilty. Americans would lose their minds. Imagine government searching your house first, and then explaining the warrant later. Americans would lose their minds. Imagine government freezing your bank account because they had a feeling. Americans would absolutely lose their freaking minds. And yet somehow when the target is property instead of a person, we're told this is normal. Perfectly reasonable, nothing to see here, folks. Move along. And my autistic brain immediately starts asking uncomfortable questions because patterns matter. And this pattern looks suspiciously familiar. Whenever a government wants more power, the argument is usually trust us. Whenever government faces accountability, the argument is usually, it's complicated. And whenever citizens object, the response is often, well, if you've done nothing wrong, what are you worried about? Which is one of the most dangerous sentences in politics, because rights don't exist for the benefit of people who've done nothing wrong. Rights exist for the benefit of people accused of having done something wrong. That's the entire point. If constitutional protections only apply after government has already decided you're innocent, they're not protections. They're congratulations. Now here's where things get even stranger. Under civil asset forfeiture, the property itself often becomes the defendant. Not the owner, the property. Which means America has somehow created legal proceedings that sound like rejected Pixar scripts. The state of Texas versus one Ford F-150. The United States versus $14,782 in cash. And we're expected to treat this as perfectly normal. Now, to be fair, there are reasons why these laws were created. Governments wanted tools to disrupt criminal enterprises. Reasonable goal. Nobody wants cartel leaders keeping their profits. Nobody wants organized crime flourishing. But here's the problem. Government has the same problem every institution has. Once it acquires power, it tends to discover new uses for it. And suddenly tools designed for extraordinary circumstances start appearing in ordinary ones. Because power expands, like my waistline after eating a key lime pie. That's what power does, which is why every generation has to ask, what are the limits? Both Republicans and Libertarians generally agree on the answer. Government should have limits. Government should prove its case. Government should respect due process. Government should not be allowed to seize first and justify later. Those aren't radical concepts. Those are foundational ideas. They're American ideas. They're conservative ideas, they're liberty ideas, and quite frankly, they're civilization ideas. Because ownership means very little if government can bypass the protections designed to protect ownership. And due process means very little if government can sidestep due process whenever doing so becomes convenient. The deeper issue here isn't money, or vehicles, or bank accounts. The deeper issue here is whether rights themselves are real. Because rights don't matter when everybody agrees, but rights start to matter very heavily when somebody powerful wants an exception. When somebody says, trust us. When somebody says, we'll only use this authority responsibly. When somebody says, it's for a good cause. That's when principles earn their keep. That's when constitutional protections matter. That's when liberty matters. And this is where conservatives and libertarians often find themselves standing on the same side of the argument. Not because we're anti-police, not because we're soft on crime, because we're skeptical of concentrated power. We understand something that history teaches over and over again. Every power created to try to rein in the worst people eventually gets used on ordinary people. Every time, without exception. The only question is how long it takes. Which is why civil asset forfeiture isn't really a debate about crime. It's a debate about limits, a debate about due process, a debate about whether government should be required to prove its case before taking what belongs to you. And if you're a conservative who believes in property rights, constitutional government, and individual liberty, the answer should be obvious. Your property shouldn't need to prove its innocence. The government should have to prove its guilt. That's how free societies work, or at least that's how they're supposed to work.